The crystalline chamber stretched upward into darkness, so vast that Marcus Webb could not see where it ended. He stood alone on a circular platform that floated in the center of the room, suspended by technology he did not understand. The platform glowed with a soft blue light that made his shadow dance across the polished floor beneath him. Around him, rising in massive tiers that spiraled into the shadows above, sat the representatives of 847 species. This was the Grand Tribunal of the Dominion Empire, the governing body that had ruled the galaxy for 200,000 years. Marcus kept his hands clasped behind his back, and his expression calm. He had been standing here for 3 hours, while creatures beyond his imagination debated the fate of his species. Some of the aliens were vaguely humanoid. Others defied description. One looked like a cloud of glowing gas contained in a sphere of light. Another resembled a mountain of crystals that hummed when it spoke. A third was simply a darkness that absorbed all light around it, communicating through pulses of cold that made the air itself shiver. High Chancellor Vrax dominated the center of the chamber. The creature stood 5 times taller than Marcus, its body resembling a massive praying mantis covered in gleaming silver armor. 4 blade-like arms gestured as it spoke, each movement precise and threatening. Its compound eyes reflected the light from 1,000 angles, making it seem like the creature was watching everything at once. The charges against humanity had been read an hour ago. Statute 847, Section C, Unauthorized Defensive Installations. The crime was simple. Earth had built weapons in its home system without permission from the Dominion. The penalty was equally simple. Immediate annexation, forced integration of all human colonies. It's the end of human independence before it had truly begun. Marcus had listened to it all without reaction. He had watched alien species argue about whether humanity deserved harsher punishment. He had heard them discuss Earth like it was a piece of property to be divided among buyers. Through it all, he had remained silent and still. Now, finally, Chancellor Vrax raised 2 of its blade arms for silence. The chamber fell quiet. 847 species turned their attention to the single human standing in the light. "You may speak, Ambassador Webb," Vrax said. The words came through a translation device that made every language sound cold and mechanical. "Offer your defense of humanity's actions." Marcus looked up at the towering alien. He looked around at the hundreds of species that surrounded him. Then he smiled.
Ow.
It was a small smile, barely visible, but several of the closer aliens shifted uncomfortably. They had studied human expressions. They knew that smile could mean many things. None of them were good. "You should have read our history more carefully," Marcus said. His voice was quiet but clear. The acoustics of the chamber carried it to every tier, every species, every listening device. Confusion rippled through the assembly. Vrax tilted its massive head. "Your history is irrelevant, Ambassador. You are a young species, barely 300 years into space travel. You were discovered by our scout ships only 15 years ago. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons cannot breach our shields. Your fastest ships move slower than our cargo haulers." The alien gestured with all 4 arms. "What could your history possibly teach us?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Your historians requested copies of our databases when you found us. They wanted to understand human civilization." "Did they tell you what they learned?" "They found records of primitive conflicts," Vrax replied. "Wars fought with chemical propellants and crude nuclear devices. Violence between tribal groups on a single world. Nothing that concerns this council." "Did they mention what happened every time someone tried to conquer us?" Marcus asked. He pulled a small datapad from his pocket. "In our history, we fought hundreds of wars. Major wars. Wars that killed millions. Wars that reshaped our entire world." He looked up at Vrax. "Do you know what almost every one of those wars had in common?" The chamber was silent now. Even the species that had been whispering among themselves fell quiet. "We lost the first battle," Marcus continued. "Every single time. We were outnumbered, outgunned. Fighting enemies with better technology, better training, better resources." He paused. "And we won anyway." Vrax's mandibles clicked together, a sound the translation device interpreted as laughter. "You compare your tribal conflicts to war with the Dominion? This chamber has ended civilizations that could destroy your entire planet with a single weapon. We command fleets of thousands. We have technology your species will not achieve for another 10,000 years. I know, Marcus said. That's why we've been preparing. The words hung in the air. Several council members leaned forward. The cloud of glowing gas brightened. The darkness creature pulsed with cold. Preparing for what? Vrax demanded. For you, Marcus said simply. We've never fought a war where we had the advantage. Never. Every major conflict in our history, we were the underdog. We've spent 10,000 years learning how to fight enemies stronger than us, how to win when we should lose, how to turn weakness into strength. He looked around the chamber. You think we're primitive? You think we're helpless? That's good. That's exactly what we want you to think. The chamber erupted. Hundreds of species spoke at once, their voices blending into a cacophony of clicks, whistles, roars, and sounds that had no human equivalent. Vrax slammed all 4 blade arms against its podium, the crash echoing through the space like thunder. Silence. The Chancellor's voice cut through the noise, turned its compound eyes back to Marcus. You dare to threaten this council? Stand in the heart of an empire that has ruled for 200,000 years and speak of resistance? I'm not threatening, Marcus said calmly. I'm informing. We reject your annexation, reject your authority over human space, and we're giving you 48 hours to withdraw all Dominion military assets from our territory. The laughter that followed was deafening. Species that did not even have mouths found ways to express their amusement. Vrax's mandibles clicked so rapidly they blurred. Our what? Human. Your species will declare war on an empire of 847 worlds? With what? Your 60 colony ships? Your mining stations? Your single orbital platform above Earth? Marcus pulled up a file on his datapad. His fingers moved quickly, entering coordinates. I'm transmitting spatial coordinates to this council. 48 hours from now, if your fleets are still in human space, we will consider it an act of war. He looked up at Vrax. If you want to know what we've been building while you weren't paying attention, send a ship to these coordinates. He pressed send. The coordinates appeared on displays throughout the chamber. They pointed to empty space 2 light-years from Earth, in a nebula humans called the Veil. There's nothing there, Vrax said, reviewing the data. Our scans show no stations, no ships, no energy signatures. Then you have nothing to worry about, Marcus replied.
48 hours, Chancellor.
After that, you'll learn why we're called the most dangerous species on our own planet.
And we were the ones who won. The Council voted. 842 species in favor of immediate annexation.
5 abstentions. 0 votes against. The decision was made. Admiral Kazathan would lead the Grand Fleet to Earth in 3 days. 5,000 warships would demonstrate Dominion power. The humans would surrender instantly as guards escorted. Marcus from the chamber, one council member watched him more carefully than the others. Counselor Thex, the being of pure energy, studied the human's face. There was no fear there, no desperation, just patience. Like someone waiting for an inevitable outcome. Thex whispered to its aide, retrieve everything we have on human warfare. Focus on the conflicts they lost. Admiral Kazathan stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Worldbreaker, and reviewed the invasion plans. The holographic display showed the human star system in perfect detail. 1 yellow star, 8 planets, a scattering of asteroids and comets, 1 space station orbiting the 3rd planet, minimal defensive installations, a few patrol craft that barely registered on sensors. This was supposed to be a military operation, requiring 5,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. The Kryn admiral felt something close to embarrassment. His species had conquered hundreds of worlds over 50,000 years. They had never lost a battle. Their ships drew power from controlled singularities. Their weapons could crack moons in half. Their shields had turned aside every weapon ever fired at them. And now, he was leading this overwhelming force against a species that could barely reach their own neighboring planets. It's excessive, his first officer said, reviewing the same data. 5,000 ships for this? We could take their system with 50? Kazathan nodded slowly. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence. a sign of agreement among his people. The Council wants to send a message, not just to humans, but to every species watching. This is what happens when you defy the Dominion. But something nagged at him, the human ambassador's confidence. Those coordinates, the way he had stood before the entire council without a trace of fear, as Ethan had interrogated thousands of enemies over his long career. He knew what terror looked like. He knew what desperate bluffing looked like. Marcus Webb had shown neither. "Send our intelligence division to me," Kezethon ordered. "I want everything they have on human military capabilities." Lieutenant Vex arrived an hour later. She was Thalon, a species known for analytical thinking and pattern recognition. Her forearms carried multiple datapads, all filled with information. She placed them on the conference table and began her briefing. "Human warfare is unusual," she said without preamble. "Their history is filled with constant conflict. They've spent their entire existence fighting each other with increasing levels of sophistication and brutality." "We know this," Kezethon interrupted. "Primitive tribal violence. Chemical explosives. Nuclear weapons they barely understood. What does this tell us about their ability to fight us?" Vex's skin changed color, a sign of concern among her people. "Admiral, it's not the weapons that concern me. It's the approach. Humans have extensive documentation on asymmetric warfare. They've written thousands of military treatises on how to fight enemies with superior technology. They've studied every historical example of weaker forces defeating stronger ones. They've analyzed every mistake their ancestors made and developed strategies to avoid them." She pulled up examples on the holographic display. Wooden ships defeating massive fleets by using weather and terrain. Outnumbered ground forces holding positions against overwhelming odds through clever use of geography. Resistance movements making occupation impossible through persistent, creative attacks. "They've also demonstrated unusual ruthlessness," Vex continued. "They built nuclear weapons and actually used them on each other, knowing the horrific consequences. They've engaged in total war, targeting civilian populations and infrastructure when they believed it necessary for victory. They have concepts like mutually assured destruction, where they're willing to die if it means their enemy dies too." Kezethon studied the data. It was troubling, but ultimately irrelevant. These are tactics used against other humans with similar technology. We're not human. We're not similar. Our shields alone make their historical weapons useless. "There's one more thing," Vex said. Her skin had turned a deeper shade, almost purple. "Human communication traffic has dropped by 95% across all their colonies in the last 3 days. Every station, every settlement, completely silent. Like they're waiting for something." The Admiral considered this. Radio silence before battle was a common tactic, but humans had no reason to hide. They had to know the Dominion could track their ships, monitor their movements, see everything they did. Unless they were hiding something the Dominion could not see. "The coordinates the ambassador provided," Kezethon said. "What do our long-range scans show?" "Nothing, Admiral. Empty space. Background radiation consistent with a nebula. No ships, no stations, no energy signatures above natural levels. Send a battle group to investigate. 12 ships under Commander Roth. Have them verify there's nothing there, then proceed with the main invasion as planned." Commander Roth considered the assignment beneath him. 12 warships to investigate empty space. It was duty for junior officers, not someone of his rank and experience. But orders were orders. He took his battle group through the jump point and emerged in the Veil Nebula at the exact coordinates the human ambassador had provided. His sensor officer ran immediate scans. "Nothing, Commander? Just nebula gas and background radiation." Roth prepared to report back when his science officer noticed something strange. "Sir, there are gaps in the radiation pattern. Spherical voids where the nebula gas should be but isn't. Hundreds of them. Natural phenomenon?" Roth asked. "Possibly, but the distribution is too regular, too organized." Roth felt his combat instincts activate. Years of training and experience screaming that something was wrong. Battle stations. Charge weapons. Active sensor sweep. Full power right now. The sensor officer's hands flew across the controls. Active sensors flooded the area with energy, illuminating everything within range. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, one by one, the spherical voids lit up. They were not voids. They were ships. Massive ships, larger than anything in the Dominion database. Angular hulls covered in weapon systems that defied classification. And there were not hundreds, there were thousands. Every single one of them rotated in perfect synchronization, bringing weapons to bear on Roth's small battle group. Targeting systems locked on, weapon ports opened. Energy readings spiked across the spectrum. How many? Roth demanded, his voice tight. The sensor officer's hand shook. 4,247 contacts, Commander. All hostile. All locked on our position. A human face appeared on the main view screen before Roth could give orders. A woman, middle-aged, with short dark hair and eyes that held no mercy. Text identified her as Fleet Commander Victoria Hale. Commander Roth, of the Dominion 4th Battle Group, she said calmly. You are trespassing in human-controlled space. You have 10 seconds to withdraw before we open fire. Roth looked at the tactical display. Over 4,000 ships surrounding his 12. But they were human ships. Primitive technology. Numbers meant nothing against Dominion shields and weapons. His pride, his training, his entire career told him that 12 Dominion warships could defeat any number of inferior vessels. He made his decision. All ships open fire. Show these primitives what happens when they threaten the Dominion. His fleet launched everything they had. Plasma lances that could melt continents. Graviton beams that crushed matter into impossible densities. Missile swarms designed to overwhelm any defense. Weapons that had never failed in 50,000 years of warfare. The human ships did not move. They did not raise shields. They simply waited as death screamed toward them at the speed of light. Then something impossible happened. Every incoming shot stopped. Frozen in space, suspended by technology Roth did not recognize. Thousands of weapons hung motionless, their destructive energy trapped in some kind of stasis field. Return fire. Victoria Hale said quietly. The human fleet opened up. And Roth learned what real terror felt like. The battle lasted 42 seconds. Commander Roth would remember every single one of them for the rest of his life. The human weapons were nothing like Dominion technology. Kinetic projectiles moving at 90% of light speed, too fast for point defense systems to track. Directed energy beams that passed through shields like they did not exist, boiling the interiors of Dominion ships. Missiles that flickered in and out of normal space, peering inside enemy vessels and detonating before anyone could react. Roth's flagship shook as impacts tore through the hull. Alarms screamed across every system. His tactical officers shouted damage reports that blended into a continuous stream of catastrophe. Shields collapsed. Hull breached. Reactor destabilizing. Crew compartments venting atmosphere. On the tactical display, Roth watched his battle group die. Ships that had survived hundreds of battles simply came apart under the human assault. The Dominion vessels tried to return fire, but their weapons could not penetrate whatever defense the humans were using. Every shot froze in space, adding to a growing cloud of suspended destruction. 20 seconds into the engagement, 9 of his 12 ships were destroyed. The remaining 3, including his flagship, had critical damage across all systems. Roth himself was bleeding from multiple wounds. Emergency force fields had sealed the bridge. But atmosphere was venting from a dozen breaches throughout the ship. The human fleet stopped firing. Victoria Hale's face appeared on the screen again, unchanged, unmoved by the destruction she had just ordered. You survived because we let you, she said. Return to Admiral Kezathon. Tell him what you saw here. Tell him this fleet is just one of 7 we've built in the 15 years since you found us. Tell him we designed every ship specifically to fight you. Every weapon. Every defense. All of it built with one purpose, to kill Dominion vessels. She leaned closer to the camera. Tell him we studied how you fight. We know your tactics. We know your weapons. We know your weaknesses. You know nothing about ours. Tell him the 48 hours are now 36 hours. Withdraw from human space, or come find out why we're called the most aggressive species on our planet, and we were the ones who dominated it. The transmission ended. Roth's 3 crippled ships limped away from the nebula, carrying news that would change everything. The emergency session of the Grand Tribunal was chaos. Counselor Vex watched as 847 species all tried to speak at once. The footage from Roth's ships played on every screen. Dominion warships, the most advanced in the galaxy, destroyed in seconds by human vessels. Weapons that ignored shields. Defenses that stopped everything the Dominion could throw at them. Chancellor Vrax slammed its blade arms down repeatedly, demanding order. When the chamber finally quieted, the questions came in a flood. How is this possible? The footage must be fake. They discovered some ancient technology. This cannot be human engineering. Vex spoke quietly, but the chamber's acoustics carried the words to everyone. It is human engineering, and it is very real. All eyes turned to the energy being. Vex pulsed with a soft light as it continued. I reviewed human history after Ambassador Webb's testimony. I found something the intelligence division missed. Humans have never fought a war where they had technological superiority. Never. Every major conflict, they were the underdog. They've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of fighting stronger enemies. The energy being brightened. When we discovered them 15 years ago, they immediately understood what we were. An empire so vast and old that resistance seemed impossible. So they did what they always do. They studied us, learned our weaknesses, built weapons specifically designed to counter our strengths. They turned their entire civilization into a military machine focused on one goal, surviving a war with us. Impossible, Vrax insisted. It takes millennia to advance from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. Another millennium to develop weapons that can challenge the Dominion. They did this in 15 years? Ambassador Marcus Webb was brought back to the chamber under guard. This time, there was no laughter when he entered. The council watched him in silence, seeing him differently now. Not a primitive from a backward world, but a representative of something they had underestimated. How did you do it? Counselor Vex asked directly. How did your species achieve such technological advancement in such a short time? Marcus stood on the platform, no longer alone, but surrounded by guards. He looked tired. The confidence from before had been replaced by something harder, grimmer. We didn't advance, he said. We adapted. When you found us, we realized we had 2 choices. Accept integration and lose our identity, or prepare for war and maybe survive. We chose survival. He gestured at the screens, still showing the destroyed Dominion ships. We poured every resource into understanding your technology. Not copying it, understanding its weaknesses. We studied every battle you ever fought, every tactic, every strategy. We found patterns, exploited them. We built weapons that don't try to match your power. They bypass it entirely. You built 7 fleets in 15 years, Vrax said. Impossible. We built them in secret facilities across 50 star systems. We conscripted our best engineers, our brightest scientists. We bankrupted our economy. We turned civilian shipyards into military factories. We did everything necessary to give ourselves a chance. Marcus's expression hardened. You didn't give us a choice. You made it clear that peaceful coexistence meant surrender. So we chose war. The chamber fell silent. Finally, Counselor Vex asked the question everyone was thinking. What happens now? Marcus pulled out his datapad. You have 36 hours to withdraw all military assets from human space. If you do, we'll negotiate a peace treaty. Recognition of human sovereignty. Non-interference agreements. We can move forward, and if we don't, Vrax demanded. Then you find out what happens when you give humans a reason to stop being peaceful, Marcus said quietly. You've seen 1 fleet. We have 6 more. You've seen what our weapons can do. We have others you haven't seen yet. You sent 5,000 ships to conquer Earth. We've turned our entire solar system into a fortress specifically designed to destroy them. He looked around the chamber. We didn't want this war. We wanted to join your community, share our culture, learn from yours. You chose annexation instead. Now you get to choose again. Peace or war. But choose quickly, because your invasion fleet is scheduled to arrive at Earth in 24 hours. And we're ready for them. The council debated for hours. Arguments raged back and forth. Some species demanded immediate withdrawal, seeing the wisdom in avoiding a war they might not win. Others insisted the Dominion could not show weakness, that accepting human demands would encourage other species to rebel. In the end, pride won. Chancellor Vrax called for a vote. 832 species voted to proceed with the invasion. 15 voted against. The decision was made. Admiral Kezethon received his orders. The full invasion force, 5,000 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, would jump to Earth in 24 hours. Destroy the human fleet. Occupy the planet. End this embarrassment. As the council session ended, Counselor Dex approached Ambassador Marcus one last time. You're making a mistake, Dex said quietly. The Dominion has resources you cannot imagine. Weapons you haven't seen. If this war continues, even if you win battles, you'll lose the war. Marcus looked at the energy being. Maybe, but we'll make you bleed for every victory. We'll make the cost so high that even if you win, you'll wish you hadn't. That's what we're good at, Counselor. Making victory too expensive to achieve. Turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. When your fleet arrives at Earth, make sure you're recording everything. The rest of the galaxy should see what happens when you underestimate humans. Admiral Kazathan's invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. 5,000 warships, the largest military force assembled in 1,000 years. Ships that could sterilize worlds, ships that had never known defeat. They moved in perfect formation. A display of power meant to terrify any enemy into immediate surrender. The Admiral stood on his bridge, reviewing tactical displays. He had seen the footage from Commander Roth's encounter. He knew humans had surprising weapons, but he also had overwhelming numbers and clear orders. Destroy the human fleet. Occupy Earth. End this rebellion before it inspired others. The fleet advanced toward Earth, expecting to encounter the force from the nebula. 4,247 human ships, armed with weapons that could threaten Dominion vessels. The plan was simple. Numerical superiority, concentrated fire, overwhelming force. Standard Dominion tactics that had worked for 50,000 years. Instead, they found a single ship. It hung in space between the advancing armada and the blue-white sphere of Earth. One vessel, massive but alone. It dwarfed even Kezethon's flagship. A construction of angular plates and weapon systems that seemed to defy normal engineering principles. One ship, the Admiral's first officer said, disbelief clear in his voice. They're defending their homeworld with one ship. Kezethon studied the vessel on the display. It made no sense. Humans had shown tactical intelligence in the nebula ambush. Why send a single ship against 5,000? Was it a desperate last stand? A sacrifice to buy time for evacuation. The communication system activated. Victoria Hale's face appeared, the same human commander from the nebula. She looked directly at Kezethon, with eyes that held no fear, no desperation. Only certainty, Admiral Kezethon, she said calmly. You've made a terrible mistake. Turn your fleet around now, while you still can. The Admiral almost laughed. One ship threatening 5,000. The audacity would be admirable if it were not so foolish. Surrender your vessel, Commander. We will be merciful. Hale's expression did not change. Mercy. Let me tell you about mercy, Admiral. When we first encountered your empire, we came in peace. We wanted to join the galactic community, share our knowledge, learn from other species. Her voice hardened. You responded by trying to annex our worlds. You made us into weapons. You turned us into what we are now. You're about to learn the worst thing you can do to humans is give us a reason to stop being peaceful. Kezethon had heard enough. All ships, advance. Prepare to fire on my command. The fleet moved forward, weapons charging. Energy readings spiked across 5,000 ships, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The single human vessel remained motionless, waiting. Execute Protocol Thermopylae, Victoria Hale said quietly. The space around the Dominion fleet came alive. Every asteroid in the system. Hundreds of thousands of rocks that sensors had dismissed as natural debris suddenly ignited drives. They were not asteroids. They were weapons platforms, hollowed out and armed over 15 years. Positioned in perfect ambush locations throughout the solar system. Earth's moon broke apart. Not destroyed, carefully separated into massive sections that had been disguised to look whole. Beneath the surface, camouflage lay shipyards and defense stations, weapon systems, and shield generators. Humanity had carved out their moon and turned it into a fortress. Every satellite orbiting every planet, every mining station in the asteroid belt, every communications relay, every civilian vessel that sensors had tracked dropped their camouflage. They were all weapons, all armed, all targeting the Dominion fleet. The humans had not hidden one fleet. They had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Kezethon realized the trap 1 second before it closed. Emergency evasive maneuvers? All ships scatter. Too late. The humans fired first, kinetic projectiles from every angle, moving too fast to track. Energy beams that phased through shields and boiled ships from within. Missiles that appeared inside Dominion vessels, bypassing all defenses. The platforms fired in perfect coordination, targeting vectors calculated to catch ships, no matter how it tried to evade. The Dominion fleet fought back with everything they had. 5,000 ships unleashing their full arsenals. Space itself seemed to burn with released energy. But the humans had positioned their weapons perfectly. Every Dominion ship faced attacks from multiple directions. Every attempt to maneuver brought them into new firing lines. Kezethon watched his fleet dissolve on tactical displays. Ships exploded or went dark as their reactors failed. Vessels tried to flee only to be run down by faster human interceptors. The formations he had drilled for decades broke apart under the sustained assault. He knew exactly how we would approach. His tactical officer shouted over the alarms. Every maneuver we make, they're already positioned for it. They studied our tactics. The Admiral realized the terrible truth. Humans had not just built weapons to fight the Dominion. They had studied Dominion warfare so thorough. Ugly that they knew how his fleet would respond before he gave the orders. Every tactical decision he made, they had already anticipated and prepared countermeasures. His flagship shook as multiple impacts tore through the shields. Alarms screamed warnings about failing systems. The mighty World Breaker, flagship of the Dominion's greatest fleet, was being torn apart by enemies it could not effectively fight back against. Victoria Hale appeared on his screen one last time. We gave you 48 hours, Admiral. We gave you every chance to avoid this. You should have listened. The flagship's reactor began to destabilize. Emergency systems screamed warnings. Kezethon had seconds to live. And in those final moments, he understood. Humans were not warriors. They were survivors. Every conflict in their history had taught them new lessons about staying alive against impossible odds. They had taken all that knowledge, all that experience, and built it into a defense that his empire could not overcome. The World Breaker exploded, taking 300 nearby ships with it in a catastrophic chain reaction. The blast lit up the solar system like a newborn star. When the battle ended 2 hours later, the debris field stretched for millions of kilometers. Of 5,000 Dominion warships, 327 escaped, most heavily damaged and barely functional. The rest were destroyed or disabled, their crews dead or captured. Human casualties numbered 1,847, crew members on damaged platforms and ships. 0 vessels lost. Not a single human ship destroyed. Earth's sky cleared. The defensive platforms went silent. The hidden fleets powered down their weapons. In the silence that followed, the greatest military defeat in Dominion history, humanity waited to see how the galaxy would respond. Victoria Hale stood on her bridge. Looking at the debris field that had been an invasion force, she felt no triumph. Just exhaustion and relief that Earth still existed. They had won this battle, but the war might just be beginning. Send a message to the council, she ordered. Tell them this is what happens when you threaten our home. Tell them we're ready to negotiate peace, but we're also ready for whatever comes next. The message was sent. Throughout the galaxy, species that had watched the invasion with interest now watched in shock as the recording spread. The Dominion, invincible for 200,000 years, had been defeated by a species barely 3 centuries into space travel. The Grand Tribunal met in emergency session. Counselor Vex watched 847 species spiral into panic. They had just witnessed the impossible. The Dominion's greatest fleet destroyed by humans. 4,673 warships gone. The largest military loss in the Empire's 200,000-year history. Chancellor Vrax stood at the center of the chamber, blade arms trembling with rage. This cannot stand. We must mobilize every fleet. Glass their planet from orbit. Exterminate them before they threaten the entire Dominion. Other voices joined the call for retaliation. Species that had been conquered centuries ago stayed silent, watching carefully. Some council members noticed that silence and realized the danger. If humans could defeat the Dominion, what stopped others from trying? We must negotiate, Counselor Vex said, the energy being's light pulsing urgently. Humans have demonstrated they can defend themselves. Further war will cost us resources we cannot afford to lose. They destroyed our fleet. Vrax roared. If we negotiate now, we show weakness. Every species in the Dominion will see that violence works. Our empire will fracture. The argument raged for hours. Finally, they summoned Ambassador Marcus Webb back to the chamber. When he entered, everything had changed. The guards who accompanied him kept their distance. Council members who had mocked him before now watched warily. He was no longer a primitive to be dismissed, but a threat to be carefully handled. Marcus stood on the platform looking exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. His clothes rumpled from sleeping in whatever quarters they had given him, but his expression remained steady. Chancellor Vrax spoke first. What do you want? No threats. No posturing. Just the simple question. Marcus pulled out his datapad, brought up a list he had prepared weeks ago. Recognition of human sovereignty over all human-settled systems. Full voting rights on this council. Non-interference treaties protecting human expansion for 500 years. Return of all human captives and any technology or data you've taken from us. Reparations for the invasion attempt. He paused, then added one more item. Access to your historical archives. Specifically, records of extinct species. The last request confused several council members. Why would humans want information about dead civilizations? Explain, Dex said quietly. Marcus looked around the vast chamber. We studied your empire while preparing for war. Do you know what we found? 73 species have gone extinct under Dominion rule in the last 200,000 years. Not from military conquest. From integration. You absorb cultures, strip their resources, erase their identities. You call it bringing civilization. We call it extinction. You let that settle. We're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting for survival. And we'll keep fighting until every species in this galaxy has the right to say no to you. Silence fell across the chamber. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Others activated private communication channels, whispering among themselves. You prepared for this war from the moment we discovered you, Dex observed. Why? Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because we've been conquered before, Counselor? Every human culture has stories of invasion, occupation, enslavement by someone stronger. We know how this goes. So when we met you, this massive ancient empire that's controlled the galaxy longer than our species has existed, we knew exactly what would happen eventually. He pulled up historical footage on the displays. Human civilizations rising and falling. Empires conquering and being conquered. Thousands of years of conflict compressed into minutes of images. We learned from every single one. We learned that superior technology does not guarantee victory, that the mightiest empires fall, that the key to survival is not being stronger, it is being willing to do whatever it takes to win. We spent 15 years preparing for a war we hoped would never come. We became the thing we always feared becoming, because you left us no choice. He looked directly at Vrax. You thought we were primitive. We are. You thought we were weak. We were, but you forgot the most important lesson in warfare. The most dangerous opponent is not the strongest one. It is the one with nothing to lose and everything to fight for, the council debated. Some species still argued for continued war. Most recognized the futility. Humans had proven they could defend themselves. Further attacks would cost resources the Dominion might need elsewhere. And other species were watching, learning that resistance was possible. The vote came. 809 species voted to accept human terms. 38 voted to continue the war. The decision was made. Peace, at least for now. Earth and all human colonies were recognized as sovereign. Humanity gained a seat on the council. The captured Dominion vessels were returned, those stripped of weapons and technology. Reparations would be paid over the next century, but the real change went deeper. News of the battle spread through the Empire. Other species, some conquered generations ago, others recently integrated, realized the Dominion could be beaten. Within a year, 17 species filed for independence. The Dominion, which had ruled unchallenged for 200,000 years, began to fracture. 5 years later, Ambassador Marcus Webb stood in the council chamber as Earth's official representative. The chamber looked different now. More species attended as independent members rather than Dominion subjects. The voting procedures had changed, allowing smaller voices to be heard. Humanity had used the 5 years well. They expanded cautiously, established new colonies, but most importantly, they shared. The weapons technology they developed was offered to other species seeking independence. Shipbuilding techniques were published in open databases. Tactical knowledge that won them the Battle of Earth became available to anyone who asked. Counselor Thex approached Marcus after a session, the energy being pulsed with curiosity. You're giving away your advantages. The weapons that defeated the Dominion. The strategies that protected Earth. Why? Don't you worry about other species using them against you? Marcus considered the question. We don't want to be the strongest species in the galaxy, Counselor. We just want to make sure no one can do to others what was almost done to us. If that means arming everyone, then everyone gets armed. He looked around the chamber. We learned something from our history. Peace does not come from one power being strong enough to enforce it. It comes from everyone being strong enough to defend them. Selves. Empires fall. They always do. But communities of equals can last forever. So you're creating potential enemies, Thex observed. We're creating potential allies, Marcus corrected. Species that owe their freedom to human help. That learned from human tactics. That share our belief that no empire should rule the galaxy? He smiled. We'd rather live in a galaxy of equals who can defend themselves than under the peace of an empire that rules through fear. The energy being pulsed thoughtfully. Your species has changed the balance of power across the entire galaxy. The Dominion will never recover its former strength. Other empires are watching, learning from your example. You've started something that cannot be stopped. Good, Marcus said quietly. Maybe the next species that reaches for the stars will find a galaxy where they're greeted as equals, not conquered as subjects. That would make everything we sacrificed worth it. Earth hung in space. No longer a threatened backwater world, but the home world of a species that had changed galactic politics forever. Not through conquest, but through the simple refusal to be conquered. The blue-white planet spun peacefully, its people looking outward to stars that held new possibilities. Instead of certain doom, in the debris field that still orbited their world. A reminder of the battle fought to protect it. Human salvage crews worked to clear the wreckage. Each piece of Dominion technology studied, learned from, added to humanity's growing understanding of the galaxy they now belonged to as equals. The story of how humans defeated the Dominion spread to every corner of the galaxy. Other species told it to their young. Some as a warning about underestimating the weak. Others as inspiration that even the mightiest empires could be challenged. All of them learning the same lesson that the Dominion had learned too late. Never, ever underestimate someone fighting for their survival. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5